Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to be featuring the Friedrich der Grosse, the Tier 8 German battleship that you can now research after the Bismarck. Now, by looking at the FDG, it very much looks like a larger version of the Bismarck that has bigger guns and still has 8 of them, but in my opinion, it is closer to a smaller version of the GK, especially considering the consumables. In this game, I am using Henry J. Hyde, and you can see that we only have 4 repair parties, whereas a Bismarck using Henry J. Hyde would actually have 5. And looking at the spotter planes, we actually have 7, very much like the GK. And the sonar is the same as the Kurfürst, where it is a 6-kilometer hydro range for detecting ships, and it only lasts 60 seconds. In my opinion, I very much would rather have the Bismarck sonar simply because it lasts much longer, which means that you can use it to push in and play aggressively, whereas a sonar that only lasts 60 seconds, even though it detects torpedoes further away, but also doesn't last as long, which means that you'll really only be able to detect one set of torpedoes, and then by the time your sonar runs out, the destroyer will be reloaded and be launching torpedoes that you won't be able to detect, whereas Bismarck, you might actually be able to detect the second set. I do hope at some point they do buff the GK and the FDG sonar duration to at least be around a minute and a half. I know PC, it lasts around 2 minutes, which would be really nice. The secondaries on the FDG are the same caliber and same number of guns as the Bismarck. However, the range of them gets dropped down by half a kilometer at its base, so it's 7-kilometer base range, and when you have a full secondary build, you can get it up to 11.1, just like the GK. But in all reality, going from the Bismarck with a full secondary build, reaching out to 11.9 kilometers, and then going to a full secondary build that is barely over 11 is a bit unfortunate and underwhelming. Plus, the nature of this game, most ships play extremely passive and long range, so getting to actually use those secondaries are much more difficult. In this game, I am not actually using a secondary build at all. I am using aiming systems with Henry J. Hyde and using his special skill, Alidad, to improve the penetration angles. I do still have Hipper and Haruna as my inspirations, and my secondaries reach out to 8.8 kilometers, which is still pretty decent for helping to deal with destroyers if you have the secondary consumable, which I unfortunately don't have in this game. And for those of you wondering why I'm not pushing into Brawl with the FDG, is basically because if you look at the minimap, the whole enemy team has basically moved all of their ships onto this side, and if I just pushed in, I would die very quickly, just like our friendly battleship who YOLO'd in. Like the GK, the firing angles backwards is actually better than forwards, so that is why I am also angled away, and I'm just being patient here, letting the enemy push towards me instead of me going towards them, since I am just absolutely outnumbered. Even our friendly destroyer who was in the cap got surrounded and was killed off very quickly after noticing all of these ships coming from the entire other side of the map and being outnumbered. There's no reason to try and contest an objective, especially since our whole team has basically won over the other flank. And as you see what I'm doing here, I am trying to disengage and potentially create a crossfire. If I continue up into this corner, enemy ships will either keep pushing towards me, being broadside to our whole team, or they will sail into our spawn and start heading towards Bravo, where then I will have a crossfire. Also, something else about the FDG is actually that its base range is much further than a lot of the other battleships, and it's sitting at around 18.7. So that means you are actually able to use the Brawler skill and still have a decent range, because if you put on the Brawler skill, it really only gets your range down to 17, which is a whole lot better than the other battleships that would force you to play around 15 and 16 kilometers. I do hope that they don't nerf the FDG range down to the 17-kilometer range, but instead buff the other battleships up higher, because this actually allows you to use the brawler battleship commanders a little more effectively, and you won't lose outrange if you use the brawler skill, and also cruisers won't outrange your tank builds by simply using beyond range. This enemy Brandenburg did start pushing me into the corner, but all I need to do is just sail away and keep shooting at him. With the Brandenburg secondaries shooting at me, I am also contemplating stopping and trying to let the Brandenburg push into my own secondary range so that I can get a little more DPM on him, although the accuracy for the secondaries won't be as good because I don't have the secondary consumable. But this Brandenburg actually keeps turning broadside to shoot all of his rear guns, and using Alidad, even if he is slightly angled, the improved penetration angles allows me to get full penetrations, which will help me chunk him and get rid of him much quicker, and using an accuracy build allows me to land much more shells and do more consistent damage. Unfortunately, he incapacitated one of my turrets, so I wasn't able to quite finish him off. I am holding off on damage conning the turret because I know his secondaries will most likely set me on a double or even triple fire, and he shoots and incaps my turret once again. I take shots with my rear turrets, and I am finally able to kill him off, and now I damage con after I know that he won't be able to set me on a permafire. Unfortunately, this Brandenburg has chased me into the corner, so now all I can really do is try my best to get back in, but with this 20-kilometer range, just by using flammable cannoneer, I will be able to start engaging targets much sooner. Turning around and pushing back in, I do still need to be very careful because I am still outnumbered. There were 2 cruisers last spotted south of A, as well as an enemy battleship, and there was 1 destroyer that was in the cap, so I do need to be careful. Fortunately, the destroyer does get spotted much closer to Bravo, so I know I don't really have to worry about him launching torpedoes at me. The enemy Iowa does get spotted, but I'm holding off on shooting at him because I want to try and push in as close as I can before the Iowa starts to just reverse bow in. I spot an enemy hipper sailing broadside, and I take a pot shot at him since I figure they're not going to really be paying attention to me all the way out here. Unfortunately, I only get 1 overpen on him, and now I am a bit worried that the Iowa will just stop and start reversing bow in, which will make my job on killing off this Iowa much harder, as well as trying to finish off those cruisers that have started heading towards Bravo. And here we have an Iowa that is shooting HE, so I now also have to be worried about and manage my damage controls. Otherwise, he could possibly set multiple permafires, and then I will die rather quickly. I am just trying to push in as quickly as possible, because I also noticed that my team isn't really doing a whole lot. While they were pushing on the other side of the map, they basically just stopped before they got into the Bravo cap, and the Bravo cap is still in enemy control, and now the enemy has turned and started to defend it. While I'm pushing in, I am using my rear guns to try and take pot shots at the cruisers that's also heading to Bravo, because I know it seems like they need help. And another one of our teammates dies. At the start of the game, it did seem quite like a promising match where we could win because we had all the map control in the world. But then our 2 teammates on our flank, 1 battleship just YOLO'd in and died, and then a destroyer stayed around too long and got surrounded and killed off. I was able to kill off the Baltimore with my rear guns, and now I am in secondary range of this Iowa, and now I can get a proper brawl in. This Iowa is moving forward very slowly, and he's also not really turning towards me to try and ram, so I am going to try and pull off a drive-by. While I'm pushing in, I'm still using my rear turrets to try and kill off the hipper, and this Iowa is still shooting HE, so managing my damage cons is the name of the game. He sets a double fire, and I damage con immediately, and before my damage con runs out, I was planning to try and citadel him. Unfortunately, the first one didn't, but the second did. If that Iowa had gotten some god tier RNG and a secondary set me on fire, that would have been really unfortunate. What's really unfortunate is that my whole team has died and my last teammate is pretty much surrounded by the entire enemy team. And all I can really hope for is that the enemy team gets greedy and tries to come back and kill me off while I contest the A objective and we win on points. If I get a win here, it's going to be a solo warrior. I took a pot shot at the destroyer and I actually landed a shot on him. And looking at the scoreboard to figure out what kinds of destroyers they still have, it is a black and a summoner. The only play I really have is to get into the A objective and try to capture it, and also using an island to try and draw in the enemy destroyers, and then finishing them off since I still have a sonar. If I were to just simply try and capture A and push towards the enemy, I am just pushing into a 4 versus 1, and I will basically die and have no chance to win. Hiding behind an island, making them push towards me, and thinking that they're going to be able to kill me off is really the only play I have in terms of winning, especially since we are down by so many points. All I really need to kill off is one destroyer and cap this objective, and possibly capping this objective, if our others don't get contested, it will be a very easy win. Unfortunately, one of the enemy ships does continue on towards our two objectives, and they do start contesting it, which now means I need to kill off two enemy ships. I am spotted by an enemy destroyer, and I do move forward and go unspotted, so I know that he is somewhere between A and B, where I am basically looking. I do beach here and wait a little bit to see if he is trying to YOLO into the cap, and then if he does contest, then I can reverse and kill him off. But you're going to see that this was a mistake because both enemy destroyers does actually end up on the right side of the cap. I use my sonar when I start reversing and I spot a bunch of torpedoes as well as the enemy black. And the last destroyer that I shot at on the north side of Bravo was the Sumner, and I know he was coming this way. And there he is getting spotted by my sonar. The two ships that I need to kill off in order to win this game are spotted. Knowing that the Sumner has launched the torpedoes, I know his torpedoes won't be reloaded, so I need to just go straight at them and kill them off. The Sumner seems like he wants to try and YOLO me, and I know the Sumner doesn't quite have his torpedoes back yet, and the black still does. His torpedoes get spotted as soon as they are launched. Unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure when this Sumner torpedoes will reload, so I have to turn away and try my best not to get torpedoed by him. The black also is intelligent and turns away and smokes up and disengages. And with less than a minute left, he is just going to sit in his smoke and try to farm me. There's really nothing left that I can do. The Izumo and Hipper both went to the other side of the map to capture our only two objectives, and now there is really no hope in winning since their points are just stacking up much higher. Our only hope would have been to kill off this black, but even then, them having 3 caps and us not having any, the points would have stacked in their favor very quickly, and we still probably would have lost. After playing Patch Day and seeing all of the players who don't make the best decisions, the game where I can possibly win, they actually make the right ones, and it ends up in a loss. But most of the games on Patch Day have not been the most enjoyable, so the teammates we got wasn't exactly a surprise. 191,000 damage and 2k base XP in a loss. In a win, this would have been 3k, and looking at the rest of our team, they didn't really do a whole lot, which is really unfortunate. And there is one more thing I want to mention about the FDG, and that is the fact that the Turtleback isn't quite as good as the Bismarck and the GK, mainly because of the angle of the slope. it is actually possible if you're in the FDG to be turning at full speed and then lifting the turtleback out of the water, and then the enemies can actually shoot, and the FDG turtleback isn't actually going to be a whole lot useful. Here I'm putting on the filter to get the German battleships to show up, just so I can show you guys what I am talking about. So first we're going to look at the FDG. I very much like the way that this port looks. It looks very good. I wish we had a port selection option, because this doesn't actually help us visualizing where the water is, so I can't really convey the issue in its entirety. What we want to pay attention to here is the main belt armor and the turtleback. You can actually see the bottom side of the turtleback, and if you pay close attention to the angle, when we switch over to the Bismarck or GK, you will see how shallow the angle is. Unfortunately, we have the armor thickness values blocking where we're trying to look, but you can clearly see where the turtleback is only slightly sloped. And here, when we look at the Bismarck, you can see that the turtleback slope is much deeper and goes much further into the water. So at close range, where a Bismarck would be protected from a citadel, the FDG may not. And here we're going to take a look at the GK's turtleback as well, and you can kind of see that the turtleback is much more angled than the FDG. Unfortunately, I don't have a cursor to show you, but basically next to the purple numbers on the right side was what I was talking about, the slope of the turtleback. You can clearly see that the FDG is much less than the Bismarck and GK. So if you were to be turning, you would actually lift that part up much higher, and then it would be possible to citadel these battleships. But that's all I've got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Do leave a like and subscribe for more. Leave a comment down below for any other ships you want to see in the future. But until next time, aloha.